G'day viewers, welcome to Cocktails with Angry, or Angry Cocktails, something I've been threatening to do for a long time. I really enjoy cocktails. I've never actually worked in a bar at all, let alone been a professional cocktail maker, mixologist, as some people insist on saying, but I basically like cocktails. I started to get into making my own, and I enjoyed it, and I got more and more into it. And I often share cocktails I make on the socials, and while I do like the classics and I regularly make the classics, I often improvise and make up my own variations and share those. And people have been saying to me for ages, you should actually have a channel specifically for this. Do this on YouTube, Instagram. So I'm doing it. And first things first, I'm here to help you get started, because while I've managed to put together a collection like this, and yes, that is all my collection, that takes a while to build up. Unless you're filthy rich, it took me a couple of years. So you need to start somewhere. And where do you start? Well, you've got to start with some basic spirits. Now, what you get is going to depend on the type of things you like to drink. But I don't think there'd be a huge amount of argument that you say, I've got enough to have 3 spirits. I would say that your starting point is gin, vodka, and whiskey. Those 3 are the base of a lot of drinks, and you can make quite a bit with just those 3. Of course, the complications are there are a lot of variations of gin. There are kind of variations on vodka, but in blind taste tests, people have a lot harder time telling the difference between vodkas. But there are literally thousands of whiskies around the world. And there are even big divisions. There's obviously Scotch whiskey, there's Irish whiskey, there's American bourbon, there's American rye, there's Canadian whiskey, there are very popular Japanese whiskies. There are some quality whiskies being made all over, including Australia. But if you go, I think the big 4 are Scotch, Irish, bourbon, and rye. It's going to be down to your taste. If you're already a Scotch drinker, get that. If you are not sure, out of all those, I'd recommend the first one you get is bourbon. It's sweeter than the others, so it's a bit easier to ease yourself into whiskey-based cocktails with that. But as you go on, you'll find there's a very big difference between a cocktail made with Scotch, made with Irish whiskey, made with bourbon, made with rye. They really have quite different tastes, and there's quite significant taste differences in the different types of whiskies within those groups. But my recommendation, starting point, base it on your preferences, but get a gin, a whiskey, and a vodka. Now, in terms of price, I have seen people say, ooh, get the top quality stuff to make your drinks even better. I call bullshit. Once you start mixing, the difference between the top range and the mid range vanishes very quickly. You really, I've learned this from trial and error, do not get really cheap and nasty shit, because you will taste that is not very good quality stuff. But just the big brands, it's somewhat uncool, if I have Jack Daniels or Jim Beam, but it's a decent quality and it's pretty affordable. So my personal recommendation is just get a mid-range drink when you're starting out. Look, if you have particular preferences, go for it, and you may develop preferences over time. That's fine. But starting out, don't be shy about just getting a very average mid-range spirit. Past those 3, you're starting to get into very opinionated territory. Again, what I think should guide you is the type of things you like to drink. Because once you get past the absolute basics, you're getting off into the woods at this point. But if you want my recommendation, the next 3 you'd go for would be tequila, rum, and brandy. And again, there's quite a range of rums, there's quite a range of brandies. I'll go out on a limb and say is not that divergent a range with tequilas. I'll probably get hate mail from tequila aficionados for saying that. But those would be my next three. And from then on, you're really opening it wide up beyond that. Now, some people would be jumping up and down, what about vermouth? Because if you want to make some classics like a martini or a Manhattan, you need vermouth. I'm not really into martinis at all. So it was quite a while before I even bothered to add vermouth to my collection. And again, there's a huge range of vermouths: white, red, dry, sweet, and with different botanicals in them. So that's a whole different thing to explore there with vermouth. Vermouth is a fortified wine, and there are a whole bunch of other fortified wines that you'll regularly see as cocktail ingredients, whether it's lillet or any other number of things. And beyond that, now I have a soft spot for absinthe. I added absinthe to my collection very early, but for some people that's quite out there, so you might not get on there. One thing I recommend you add to your collection relatively early, maybe not in those first 5 or 6, but depending on what you like, maybe you should, that's fruit liqueurs. And it doesn't have to be anything really fancy or out there, but there are a lot of really nice and classic cocktails that particularly have orange liqueurs in there. You'll see triple sec or Cointreau or some other orange liqueurs recommended as an ingredient in a lot, including one of my favorites, the Sidecar. But you can mix and match those. Yes, there are differences between different orange liqueurs, but get one. Again, you don't have to get anything fancy. You can get triple sec or Cointreau from virtually any bottle shop, and there's almost no limit to fruit liqueurs. There's a whole bunch of cherry liqueurs, and you get pear and all these other things. And I mentioned brandy before. There's your basic brandy, and when you go up market a bit, you get some cognac. But there's apple brandies, the American Applejack, the French Calvados. There's basically a whole bunch of permutations of brandies. They've got the same basic method, but because the ingredients are very different, the tastes are very different. And how I started getting, I guess, more and more out there ingredients is I'd just see a cocktail recipe and it'd say, put this in it. And I go, what the hell is that? And I would look it up and go, oh, maybe I need some Dubonnet. Oh, maybe I'll get some Drambuie. Maybe I'll get, this, that, or the other. That's how my collection grew, because I would see the same ingredient I didn't have come up in multiple cocktail recipes, and so I thought, I'm going to get some of that. I tell you what, I'm getting that. And once you really get into exploratory territory, there are so many things you can try. Liqueurs flavored with virtually anything you can imagine. A whole range of really herbal liqueurs. I've got a chili liqueur from Mexico. It's pretty goddamn fierce. And basically any taste you can imagine probably exists. And you can make your own flavors with some base spirits, and I will be doing that in some other videos coming up. But that's my recommendation of how to start your booze collection for making cocktails. But cocktails aren't simply booze. There's the other things. There's a lot of fruit juices, particularly citrus juices, in cocktails, and you can either get the fruit themselves, and everyone goes, I've got to use fresh lemon juice or fresh lime juice. And yes, it actually does taste different. I, in my laziness, have got, hey, here's a big bottle of lemon juice from the supermarket. It's cheaper than buying multiple lemons. And although they just say, this is 100% lemon juice, fresh almost always has a notably different taste, and it does taste better. But don't kill yourself. Like I said, if you're just starting out, if you're just experimenting, I'm not going to look askance at you if you're using bottled lemon juice or lime juice from the supermarket rather than squeezing your own fresh limes and lemons. Something else you have to think about is sweeteners. A lot of cocktails have sweeteners. Whether the recipe recommends actual sugar, something that you maybe mix with, say, bitters, grind up and blend into the drink, or a sugar syrup. Now, some of my favorite drinks, there's often recommended you use actual sugar, and then they'll normally say like superfine sugar. Sometimes they just go sugar cube and then put a bit of this on it and melt it and then scooch it up and mix it. I find that a bit of a pain, and there's almost always some sugar residue in the drink. Some people like that. Personally, I don't. I almost always go for a sugar syrup. These, again, are relatively easy to get from a supermarket, but they're super easy to make on your own. Sugar syrup is literally just 50% sugar, 50% water. Boil water in a pot on the stove, add the sugar, stir it, don't let it burn, because it's sugar, it will burn unless you like that caramelized taste. That's something to experiment with, but just mix it. When the sugar's dissolved, let it cool down and store it in a sealed bottle in the fridge. It'll last quite a while. And you can experiment. There's white sugar, there's brown sugar, there's demerara sugar. I found some coconut sugar in the supermarket a while ago and tried that, and it made a really nice drink. And there's also liquid sweeteners that are basically designed for baking, but volume wise they're 1-for-1 for sugar. So you can get various cane syrups and they all have their own flavor profile. That's interesting. The different sugars will make your drink taste different. Some people actually use honey, and of course various honeys have different flavors and can be quite strong. So this is actually another area where you can experiment. A lot of people underestimate how much difference to a drink different sweeteners make, but it's another area you can experiment in and use a flavor that personally appeals to you. Now, those are all components that you drink, but you need something to make the drink with and something to drink from. I do recommend you get a cocktail shaker. The basic one, little two-piece, sometimes called a Parisian, usually very cheap, very easy to get, and I prefer it to the one that's called the Boston thing. It's like either a pint glass and metal glass, or two tins. I find them more fiddly to use. Some people prefer them. I prefer the simple Parisian. There's also, you get one that's got a little screw-off top and it's got a built-in filter. I always worry about losing the lid off that because it's a bit fiddly. Just get a simple, straightforward shaker, or improvise. If you've got something you can shake a cocktail in, don't let anyone who's a purist say, no, it has to be this. I'm not about purist, I'm about getting a result. And you do need some sort of strainer. And again, there's a standard cocktail strainer that fits on a cocktail shaker. And again, they're not particularly expensive. But hey, if you've just got a kitchen strainer, you can use that. And that's usually to filter out the ice if you've shaken the cocktail with ice, or if you've muddled some fruit in there and you don't actually want the fruit residue in the drink. In that case, you do want like a fine kitchen strainer. You've probably got one. Improvise. We're just, MacGyvering this shit here. We're not purists. So that's my tips on your booze collection, juices, sweeteners, your implements. Hey, don't forget glasses to drink out of. That can actually affect the taste of the drink. You don't have to get the really expensive top-end glassware, although it feels nice and fancy to use glasses like that. But the glass, surprisingly, can have quite an effect on how the drink tastes. Partly from perception, but also partly how it holds an aroma can actually change the drinking experience. So that is also worth looking into, what of the various bar glassware you're going to end up with. So as I go on, I'll be making cocktails. This was just the intro, how to get ready to make cocktails. Next, we'll be making them. We're off on the adventure. If you're wondering, what should I do? Start looking up cocktail recipes online. Find things that sound like they might taste good to you. Just say, what ingredients do I have? I've literally done that. What ingredients do I have? I'm going to say this, this, and this into the old search engine, and what cocktail can I make from that? And I've made some great discoveries that way. And I also sometimes make custom drinks for friends. I ask them to say, what flavors do you like? What's your favorite booze? Where are you from? Tell me something about your personality, or I know something about your personality, and I come up with signature drinks for them. It's fun. That's also something I'll be doing further on, but you can ask me questions about any aspect of putting together cocktails. I'll do my best to answer them, whether it's by replying to comments or actually making a video to answer some good questions down the line. So I hope you're looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to this little adventure, sharing my hobby with you. It's not alcoholism, it's a hobby and a craft. And making a few interesting drinks, some classics, some less well known, and some improvised, and some signature drinks for people when I get to that stage. So yeah, if this sounds like something you'd like to be part of and learn more of, do the old 1, 2, 3 with a subscribe, and ring that bell. Leave comments letting me know what you want out of this channel. That will be interesting to me. And I'm going to be uploading at least 1 or 2 ideas a week, whether it's a cocktail recipe or something you should add to your home bar. And we'll see where this takes us. This is the start of what I hope is going to be quite a fun journey. So if you're watching this on my Angry Aussie channel, you might go, what the hell are you talking about? I'm going to do a bit of cross promotion in the early days. Eventually, the cocktail stuff will just all be on the Angry Cocktail channel. But if you're seeing this on the Angry Aussie channel, I do hope you'll go over and subscribe. This is the first new channel I've started in ages, and I'm quite looking forward to it. And it would be fun if you came along for the ride.